a bank deposit account made. And there were withdrawals, there were deposits. At any given time, this money is put in different investment accounts. That is what normally called in the investment field, there's a float of the depositor. So that will be the function of the people who will analyze this whole thing. How much at any given time was the float of the respondent, if he had any float of investment, and all of these are assets that ought to have been included in the SALN. So, proceed.
I think the Senate President asked it more clearly. So if I may use the word, how much was the float at...
I'm sorry, Your Honor.
Ma'am, I think the Senate President put it more clearly. Magkano po yung float at one point in time or any point in time? How much was the money in dollars? I want to know if your office made an analysis. I understand that ang binigay po sa inyo ay transactions. Hindi binigay sa inyo kung magkano ang pera niya at a certain point in time. So, was the analysis together with the COA?
At one time, there was a withdrawal in the amount of 1,797,722.54.
Okay. Second question, ma'am. The AMLC only gave this 17-page. Did they give you the balances at the end of the year of the...
No, Your Honor.
And they cannot give that to you?
We never asked for it, Your Honor. And I think they have to analyze it.
Just for the purposes of the impeachment court, we agreed in caucus that we will be looking at the balances on December 31 of every relevant year when he was in government. That's why if this can be given to us, it would make it much easier for us. No? Ma'am, that's my last question regarding the actual amounts. But just go to the issues brought up by Senator Miriam. Ma'am, let me first tell you where we're coming from. After the 2007 election, as Blue Ribbon Committee Chair, we had several investigations. The ZTE, the fertilizer scam, the swine scam, the gift giving in Malacanang, cash gift giving. And every time we had a hearing, the AMLC, and it was the same Executive Director, Aquino, no, would tell us that he cannot give us any information and he cannot give us any information about the accounts because he needed a court order to do so. And we told him, is there any way that you can give it? He did not mention that simply by the ombudsman requesting them, then the ombudsman could have these records. Having said that, we also had hearings where the former ombudsman, and she was being criticized. I don't know if it was because of her name being named Mercy, she was being criticized of being so merciful, that she was being criticized of not investigating impeachable officers. While advocates like Risa Ontiveros, Joel Villanueva, and other party list groups were saying, you can investigate but not file the cases. So one question, ma'am. What is the present mindset or view of the Office of the Ombudsman regarding Supreme Court justices? You can investigate very clearly under Section 22 if it leads to an impeachment. That's clear, right, ma'am?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yeah. Now, can you investigate for a criminal case but stop at the investigation and not file the case?
I think the phraseology of the law is that if an impeachable officer is being faulted for a criminal law, the law says, for a criminal offense, the law says that you have to wait for the termination of or the retirement or the resignation or the termination of service before you can file a criminal case. That's what the law says.
And as a former Supreme Court Justice, that's important for judicial independence because you do not want losing litigants or people who want to pressure the courts to go to the DOJ or the Ombudsman and ask them to investigate justices while this is going on, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
So the question is, ma'am, it seems like it is a new interpretation to interpret the waiver in the, and if I may be allowed to read it, no, the waiver in the SALN, which states that the waiver in the SALN which says, I hereby authorize the Ombudsman or his authorized representative to obtain and secure from all appropriate agencies, including the Bureau of Internal Revenue, such documents that may show my assets, liabilities, net worth, business interests, and financial connections, to include those of my spouse and married children of below 18 of age living with me in my household, covering previous years, to include the year I first assumed the office in government. In this case, it was signed by Chief Justice Renato Corona, and I assume all government officials pumipirma din, ma'am, no?
Yes.
Kaya ko po sinasabing bagong interpretation, kasi dati, yung mga previous ombudsman, ma'am, BIR lang ang tinitignan ng ibang agencies, pero yung AMLAC, hindi nila kinukunan at sinasabing confidential kasi yung bank accounts. To prove my point, for the last 20 years, if you look at the congressional archives, napakaraming bills dito, one of them kay Senator Lacson, to amend either the bank secrecy law to exclude public officials, or I think Senator Escudero, myself, we're working on bills that will amend the SALN form to include waiver sa bank accounts. And if you remember, ito yung challenge ko kay First Gentleman dati, I'll sign a waiver sa bank account ko, mag-sign din kayo ng waiver ng Presidente Arroyo sa bank account nyo. But with the present interpretation now of your leadership, don't get me wrong, Mama, I agree with it. I agree in a progressive way of fighting graft corruption. But I just want to assure the public that there will be balance and safeguards here. So, ma'am, can I clarify? So, the interpretation now of the Office of the Ombudsman is because of this waiver, taken together with your powers under the Constitution, you can simply write to AMLAC and ask them for information about their bank transactions, and it will be given to you. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes, Mr. Senator. To me, that's a consent
That's a consent.
on the part of the tax filer
So, no need
that
to...
is allowing the ombudsman to
Yes. Sorry for interrupting, ma'am.
sit. Mhm.
So, no need, ma'am, to amend the bank secrecy law or the SALN law, because all the ombudsman has to do is write them. And all the AMLAC has to do, on the other hand, is be very progressive, that if a public official is depositing more money than what is his SALN, they can consider it a suspicious transaction, even if it's below 500,000. They can make a report and give it to you.
Mr. Senator, that's a debatable issue.
Okay.
I'd rather not give my opinion.
I'm sorry about that, ma'am. Where I'm going to is this. There's been a lot of talk, especially in the media and even among senators, about the balance here. That you want an administration that goes after graft and corruption, but not only against the past administration or against their enemies. So I guess what I'm driving at is that with this interpretation, which again I say I support, will the Office of the Ombudsman have a protocol wherein, as you said a while ago, when the nature of the complaint calls for AMLAC to give you information, will it be an SOP, regardless if it is a foe or a ally of the present administration? I ask this, ma'am, with your record has been sterling in the Supreme Court, and there I'm talking about all future ombudsman and the policy of the Office of the Ombudsman. So meaning, ma'am, whether it is the fertilizers, whether it's the ZTE past administration, or let's say 2 weeks from now, there's suddenly a scandal with one of the departments, no? And one of the USECs is being alleged to deposit 50 million in his bank account as a lagay from ganyan. Will this now be a practice of the Office of the Ombudsman to write the AMLAC and ask them to give you the information?
For as long as there are leads that indeed these charges are meritorious, then we will certainly do that, Your Honor.
Ma'am, just as last line of questions.
May I request the gentleman to wrap up?
Sir, may be allowed one last.
Yeah. Proceed.
If you read, ma'am, the AMLAC law, as you said, no, it's maybe I should have I should ask the executive director of AMLAC, because
That's
what
all
you
right.
simply did is to ask him for it and they gave it to you, no? But
To ask for data.
for the data,
To
ma'am,
have a bearing on the
yes,
financial transactions and related transactions.
which is within your powers, and they did give it to you. But when we asked him, maybe he did not understand, or he did not think that to suggest that we course it through the Office of the Ombudsman. The thing, ma'am, is that there are prohibitions in law, including, for example, the bank secrecy. So, for example, ma'am, I signed a waiver in my SALN. But, of course, I still have my constitutional rights.
Yes,
So, for example, if you ask the PNP or the NBI for help to do some investigation on my office, that doesn't mean that the police can enter my office without a warrant, and they cannot say, I have a waiver that you signed in your SALN and it was given to the ombudsman, because I still have the right against unreasonable searches, and there is no probable cause, no warrant. Is that correct, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Yes. So in the same way, ma'am, where do we draw the line? What information the AMLAC can give the office of the ombudsman? When is it unreasonable for them? Because in the past, they've always interpreted Supreme Court decisions to say that when it is a covered transaction, they cannot look into it yet until there is a predicate crime, until there is probable cause, and until AMLAC is unanimous, the three officials, into investigating. And in the past, they have interpreted giving information as an investigation report rather than just data. I think, ma'am, that is the uneasiness in the balance between giving you all the powers to go after graft and corrupt, after grafters and after corrupt public officials. On the other hand, making sure that the power is not abused or, well, not abused, but
With
it's
the
not
indulgence
arbitrary.
of the gentleman, these issues are not cogent to the impeachment process we are here. This is not in aid of legislation. We are trying a case of impeachment. So if we want to amend the laws in order to adopt certain policies, we'll have to take that up as a legislative body. But we must concentrate, focus our attention to the matter at hand, and that is the impeachment case before us.
Thank you, Mr. President, for that reminder, because what I was going through is that if this is a product of an illegal search, then this is not admissible. But if it is covered by the waiver, then it is admissible. But I would agree with you, Your Honor, that it is partially not included. But I think it is of grave national importance because
We have to bear in mind, with your indulgence, that the witness was subpoenaed at the behest of the defense. And she was here primarily as a witness for the defense, although they qualified her as a hostile witness. So they're bound, the defense is bound by the revelations of the witness during the direct examination as well as during the cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Mr. Presiding Officer, I know the Ombudsman to be only hostile to grafters and corrupt people in government, but I just wanted these issues ventilated so that we would know when we analyze the evidence. But secondly, I just thought, Mr. President, in my view, that this is of grave national and political importance for our country, because this is the first impeachment in how many decades. But anyway, I'll stop there, Mr. President, because my time is up. But may I solicit a view from the Ombudsman? Ma'am, where do we draw the line between it is just data or it is... So what can the AMLAC give you and what can they not give you?
Well, the question should be addressed to the AMLAC,
okay.
because we give them copies of complaints, and if they determine that the request of the ombudsman is in order, then they do that. If they don't, then they will write the ombudsman citing the reasons why they cannot give the data, financial data or related transactions.
Actually, the rules of evidence govern in these proceedings, not in the case of